I know you guys are excited about this part of Coastal Scene Seashack. That's this piece right here. Well, we finally got to the good part. It's worth waiting for. We're going to paint the rusted roof. That's right. We're going to paint that old rusty roof. There it is, right here. And I'm going to show you all of my technique about rusted roof, the colors to use, how to mix them, how to apply them, and I also have probably 4 or 5 other particular techniques for doing the same thing for painting a rusted roof. So you hold on, we're coming right back, and you're going to really have fun with this one. Hello everybody, and welcome back to part 3, which is the old crusty rusted roof on this coastal scene, which is Seashack. We're getting ready to do that old rusted roof. And by the way, how you like it's like my coronavirus hair. It's getting longer and longer. Come on, virus, start ending so we can get after it. Let's roll. All right, what you're seeing now is a blow up of that area of Seashack. What we're going to do, this old rusted roof right up in here. And I did a little bit of it before we came in, and here's a little bit. That's just one particular way you can do these rusted roofs, and I'm going to show you a couple of those. Let me move that aside. Let me first show you. These are actually the colors that you can use, or I should say that I used, in order to be able to paint it. First of all, I did a mixture: cobalt blue, quinacridone red, Hansa yellow deep, and transparent red iron oxide, or you can use burnt sienna, and just test it out and see what you like. Or you might want to use just transparent red iron oxide with a little bit of red in it, and this quinacridone red. But there are a couple of other colors too that you can use. There's a quinacridone rust. This particular one is made by M. Graham. And then everybody just about makes a quinacridone burnt orange. And you can combine them with any of these colors to change the hue, which is the color, or the value. Now, before we start, let me show you a couple of little things. First offhand, you see cobalt blue here. And the reason why I have cobalt blue there is because most of the time this is the way these old roofs come initially when they're new. They've got all this, it's shiny, sort of silver blue, grayish blue. You can see it everywhere here. And as time goes by, you start getting all this old rust. And it can rust in a whole number of ways. I mean, here's another example of just regular old sheet metal. And, you know, you can see the light portion of it all through here. It's starting to gray down and almost to a powdering effect before it starts getting the old rusty. And then from there, it gets real rusty and it'll just crater right through. So with that in mind, get this out of the way. What I did is I went ahead and I started one and showing, I don't know, let's see, let me pick this up a little bit. What I did is I showed some with breaks in the old sheet metal, and I also have some, as you saw in that first picture, these narrow, long V crimp. It's got that little crimp to the top of it, and we'll do some of the technique on here right now. Now, let me get a scrap piece of paper, and you should always have a scrap piece of paper with you. And I'm going to go in and make a little mixture. I've got my transparent red iron oxide. Here it is. Okay, and if I use just that, for instance, and I'm going to use a flat brush as well, this is a number 6 round for the purpose of this painting. All right, and I'm holding my brush almost parallel to the surface of my table. And I'm gonna, this is wet on dry. Okay, there's texture. That's what you're looking for. You're looking, you can vary it. I'm going up, I'm rolling, I'm rolling my brush with my fingers while I'm doing it. You can see my fingers roll. How much do you want to put on there? That's up to you. How much texture do you really want? Let's take one of these panels back in here. And let's go to this panel, for instance. All right, here we go. I'm going to use the same round brush and the same technique. I'm going in here wet on dry, and I'm rolling my brush, and wherever it goes is where there's going to be rust. That's it. Let me pick that up and show you a little bit closer. Okay, let's leave it like that. Okay? If I took another one, if I mixed a little, first of all, used a little cobalt blue. Here's a little cobalt blue. Let me get a little water on it. And I'm going to go into this panel right next to it. And I'm going to do a similar thing with my brush. I'm rolling my fingers at the same time as I'm pulling this blue down. Now you can see I still had a little rust on my brush, evidently. You can see a little bit of it up in here. All right, we'll let those dry. We'll come back to those so that we can go in and deepen or darken some areas and check it out. All right, we're going to take a little bit more, deepen my little transparent red iron oxide here. Put a little bit of water in it, not much. And I'm going to clean my brush off. And I'm going to come in and get a little bit of my cobalt blue. And I'm going to mix a little of this transparent red iron oxide with it. And I'm going to get sort of a grayed down color. Show you what it is. See it? Okay, now you can mix whatever you think would be the hue that you need in order to be able to show the roof the way you want it. All right, so here we go. I'm rolling my brush down and I'm just coming right straight down. Now, the reason I don't tape my watercolor paper to the board, or if I do, it's a board just big enough that I can turn it around or move it anywhere I want to, because I like to paint this way, up and down. So if I want this heavier at the bottom, I can roll my brush and come up this side lightly, and I can get a little bit more pigment down up in here. Now I'm going to go ahead while it's wet. Here's another technique you can use. Clean my brush off. Let's turn it back up again. And if you, to relate to this, obviously this is the sky. Obviously these are the boards down below the roof line. And these are the roof areas. Okay, now let's go back into my heavy red iron oxide. And if I want to come in and dilute this, if I want the pigment while it's damp to stay down in this location, then I'll leave my paper oriented this way, because I'm on about a 15-degree slope with my table. So we'll leave it like that. I'm going to wash my brush off. Okay, just going to kind of pick up a little bit of that in here. But let's say I wanted it a little further up and I didn't want to take a chance of putting too much dark up there. All right, I'm going to turn my paper around again a little bit, or even just pull it down. Just grab it with your brush and pull it to what you want. It's a lot easier to do that, what I'm doing now, than it is to try to pull it up. You can pull it up, but it's a lot more, well, let me put it this way. It's a lot easier for me to do it the other way around, pulling this down. Now, let's go back to this particular panel of the rusted roof. It's dry enough now that we could put whatever we want to put in it. So let's take a little bit of our cobalt blue. And in your round brush, by the way, you need a nice pointy, you should be able to see that point. Look at the point on this brush, on that round brush. You need something real pointy. So I've got a little cobalt blue on my brush, And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to come in here. This time I'm using cobalt, and I'm just going to mix, just let it lay up in here. Just lightly. And what that's doing is showing that this panel obviously has not started rusting as bad as this panel yet, or as bad as these two panels over here. So therein lies basically the main technique. Now, you see some darkened spots in here. Here's how I get those darkened spots. And again, there are a lot of ways to do it. I go in with my transparent red iron oxide, and this is almost identical, very close to quinacridone rust or burnt orange, quinacridone burnt orange. You can see there are all these hard earthy tones, and they look like rust all themselves. I'm going to leave that up here and move mine down just a hair. Now I'm going to take this real deep mix of red iron oxide. Clean my brush off a little bit so I don't contaminate. Now this is cobalt blue. A pretty good swig of cobalt blue. And this is what you get. Okay, now what you have is a mixture of both of the colors we've used in here before. So you have harmony with your painting. It's going to look much better. Let's take some of that dark, and while it's damp, this is still damp. See it running? See it right here? It's just spreading out. Now, I'm going to turn my page back up because I want it to run up, down the sheet, I should say, but up the roof. And I am just touching this where it's damp with my brush point. Okay, and I want to get a little of it up in here. Now I'm going to clean my brush off. I'm going to zoom in so you can really see up close and personal what I have. Okay? Just a damp brush. I'm just going to touch where the pigment is, where it's running, and I'm just going to move it down. I'm using the bottom of my brush as well as the point. Okay? So I'm just getting a little character going into here, just a little bit. Go back up in here and do the same thing. Just move it around. I don't have any pigment on my brush. All I have is a little bit moisture. So only thing I'm doing is I'm just softening a few edges. I'm leaving a few hard lines. Let me turn it back around the way you're supposed to see that roof. Okay, now, so here's what I have. I've got and see it's still damp, just barely damp. Now that's a pretty good shot of a really nice, simple area of rusted roof. Yeah, it's that simple, guys. It's just that simple to do. And you know what's crazy about it? Yeah, I heard you in the background say, and you charge people for this? It's all in technique. It's all in learning technique. Let's keep on this same pattern. I'm going to now dry brush some deep red off of my palette made with my transparent red iron oxide, and also the deep dark one that I mixed some of that cobalt blue, and then I'm going to put a little bit more cobalt blue in it. Make it it's not bluish, it's not cold, but I'm going to come back up in this area, and this is what's called a ridge cap at the top of most roofs. And the panels, the flat roof panels slide over there. The cap is over the top of them, and it starts rusting up in that area. Now, this is wet on dry. Wet on dry. However, I'm going to dry my brush off, at least wash it off. It's still moist. And I'm going to take a damp brush and I'm going to just touch. Flat. Now see this running down? I'm just going to connect it to there. I'm just going to hit the edge. Now I'm going to take a lot of the moisture off of my brush. I just wiped it. And I'm just hitting it with a little moisture so it can run down. Now, what does that show? That just exemplifies the fact that it's under this particular roof cap. And it's rusting up under there. You can go back in, take some of your red iron oxide and hit it, and it becomes really deep, as you can see. Okay. Now, here's another thing about these panels. You see this little white line going through here? Well, this panel is flat, and this makes a V. It's flat again, it makes a V. It's like this. Oh. Okay, so if the light is coming from left to right, there's going to be a shadow line in here. So I'm going to take a little bit of my beautiful neutral tint. That's a color I have on my palette. If you guys saw my palette series on here, I'm going to go in with that neutral tint and I'm going to pick up that shadow line. Now I'm going to move this over just a hair. And again, I'm having my brush on the side. Now that's a little bit too wide because the V doesn't go up that high. So I'm just going to come in and scumble a little bit. Now I'm washing my brush. I'm drying it off. I've got what's called a thirsty brush. And I also have my trusty paper towel. So now I've just hit the neutral tint again, and I'm just touching that area where it was wet. So now I've got a shadow line all down here. And I'll just bring it all the way. Look how easy it is if you have your paper positioned where you can just move it down, and in a small area, use your wrist to get it down here, just like that. On the other side, for me to get close to this edge of the white, I would turn my paper around. So there you go, everybody. I want you to practice this. Yep, I said practice this. This is so easy to do, and it's so much fun to do. Here is the flat brush approach. I'm wetting my flat brush. Now I have an angular flat brush. Okay? Now it's just a matter of choice. Now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to wet this panel. You can see I'm just going down and down. Very simple. I'm coming into my transparent red iron oxide, and very simply, going to make sure I don't have a whole lot on there. I'm just going to push down on the brush towards the paper and let up. I'm going to come along this edge. Okay, I'm going to get a little bit more pigment on it, and I'm going to push and pick up. And now, let me close back in again on here because you can see it real good. I'm going to use the point of the brush and just pick up some streaks up in here. How many do you want to put up there? Well, you've heard me say this a jillion times. Let your eye be the judge. All right, let's wash that off. Let's go pick up just some of the cobalt blue. Maybe the balance of this just stays blue. Okay, and I'll go back and get some of the real dark part where I put the cobalt, mix the cobalt blue with the transparent red iron oxide, and there'll be a deep shadow line under this one. I'm using the point of that brush. I mean, you can make this anything you want. That's basically how you do it. It's a pretty simple technique in terms of what you want to do with an old rusted roof, but any of these would look great on any old rusted barn or old shack. Okay? So you guys go out there, enjoy yourself, Make sure you practice this, because coming up in another week is going to be another part of the coastal scene with Seashack right here. So you guys enjoy it, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.